Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The regular meeting of the Grosse Ile Township Planning Commission will come to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before moving into the first item, I just want to thank all of you commissioners for being flexible in terms of changing your plans and our timing, and to Brian as well for expediting his work. We are here tonight at the behest of helping the applicant for the building blocks expansion to have his project critiqued tonight. In 2 weeks, made a big difference in terms of his schedule and his ability to complete the project on a timeline that he is desiring. And so everybody kind of stepped forward on this, and it is much appreciated. And that is the sort of thing a planning commission should be doing. In addition to critiquing and making sure the plans are what they are, we need to help applicants as we move through. And so thank you. The next item on the agenda is deletions and or additions to the agenda. Anybody want to change the agenda from that presented? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Motion from Eric, support? Support. Support from Brian. Call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the review of the minutes from May 19. Anybody have any questions on those minutes? Mickey?
No, they look good.
Steve?
Nope.
Jay?
Sorry, me?
Ann?
No.
Jim?
No.
Brian?
No.
Eric?
No.
All in favor, entertain a motion, please, to approve the minutes as prepared nicely by Lori.
So moved.
Motion from Ann, support?
Support.
Support from Steve. Call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Again, good job, Lori. The main item of business is next. It is the, public comment, but there's anybody, no. Okay, so moving straight to the site plan review. A little background first. This is a site plan review for the Building Blocks Learning Center. The applicant is the Building Blocks Learning Center and Daycare, 8003. Macomb. Kevin Dermody is the owner. Working with Mr. Dermody is Mr. Boll, an architect who has prepared the materials tonight. His address is 89725 Bayview. The location of the facility legally is Lot 37 of the Horace Gray subdivision. The common description is 8003 Macomb. This is adjacent to the entrance to the east entrance to the Colony condos complex there on the south side of Macomb. The proposal, the current structure that they use for daycare is about 3,800 square feet. The proposal is to expand this facility by adding an additional 1,400 square feet, bringing it up to approximately 5,200 square feet in total. The extension that's proposed is to the rear of the building, moving toward the back of the property. And in doing so, this will enable the applicant to increase the number of children and toddlers that he is servicing from roughly 57 to roughly 81, if my memory is correct. The zoning on this is Macomb Street District. The relevant ordinances here, there are two. First is Article 7, the Macomb Street District standards, and second is Article 21, site plan review. Now, because this is a significant expansion in the facility, roughly a 30% expansion, under Article 21, it requires that this plan be brought forward as a full site plan review, meaning that there are engineering drawings and the like that we review. The process identified in Article 21 is a two-step process. The first is a pre-application conference in front of the Planning Commission. That occurred 2 weeks ago. That was what we were doing when we first heard from the applicant. The second is the Planning Commission decision, and that is on the agenda for tonight. A little background, because you kind of need to know what's gone on since the last meeting. There's been a lot of activity on this project, and I want to kind of bring everybody up to speed first.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before you do that, I just want to bring up one point, if it's all right.
Yes.
So, I don't know if it's an issue or not, but I think I should bring it up. So one of my children was a building blocks last year. I think it was under different ownership at that point in time, and either one or both of them are signed up for this summer as well. So I just wanted to bring that up so the commission knows. I'm not sure if we need to take a vote if that's a conflict of interest or not, but I did want to bring that up.
Okay, well, I would entertain a motion, please, as to whether anybody considers that to be a conflict of interest.
I would move that the commission acknowledges and waives any concern about conflict of interest in that situation.
We have a motion from Jay. Is there support for that motion?
I would support it.
Support from Jim. Is there discussion?
I'll just bring up that I have children at a competing daycare, so I don't think that would be an issue either, but just figured I'd let everyone know.
Okay.
Can I add, I used this daycare, but it was a while ago.
Okay.
Can I add that I went there for 1 year when I was...
Jay, did you flunk out? That was a few years back, Jay.
It was a few years.
Okay.
Maybe different ownership. I think Kevin was 9.
All right, so with that discussion, I will call the question. All in favor of Jay's motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Eric, thank you for bringing that up. That's the way we do business here at the Planning Commission. Everything up front and above board.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, a little background.
Just to be clear, though, there was 2 other people that did raise a concern. I don't want anybody in the audience to think you didn't address. They sound like they raised valid concerns. I don't know if that needs to be addressed or not.
Actually, that is a good point. Could I entertain a motion, please, on those 2 other discussion points?
Is the previous motion still, is that a passed motion? We would need a new motion, or can I still amend it?
Let's amend it.
I'll amend it to acknowledge and waive any concerns about the other concerns that were raised, or the other potential conflicts that were raised.
Okay, and that was Mickey?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, and Brian?
Yes.
Okay, so we've amended that motion. Lori, have you got that?
Yes.
Okay, let's run it through again. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. There we go. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Okay. At the last meeting, we had a pre-application. It was a pre-application meeting where the applicant introduced the issues and the project to the public and to the Planning Commission. There were, going back even a little bit further, the packages that came out to us as commissioners came out late. Normally we get the packages about 2 weeks ahead of time. Okay, that gives plenty of time for planning commissioners to go and basically look at these things, see what's there, and make an assessment which is independent of what Brian, our planning consultant, actually does. Okay, now, because the packages were late, okay, in my particular case, by the time I got over there, I saw things that I wanted to discuss with the applicant that I thought were relevant to the project, but on the weekend before, it is flat out not fair in the form of a pre-application conference to surprise an applicant with issues that he has never heard about. That's not the way you do business. Okay, so on that basis, I basically took a step back, and everybody had comments, and the applicant went off. But subsequent to the meeting, I asked for the officers and staff to set up a concept review meeting, which is basically, it is outlined as a process for the officers to help guide applicants in the site plan review process. And we worked with the applicant, and the following Wednesday, 2 days later, after the meeting, we met. And all of these detail items that needed to be covered with the applicant were individually gone through. Now, for those of you not familiar with the concept review meeting, it is an advisory meeting. The purpose is to make sure that the applicant understands exactly what the ordinance standards are, and to help guide the applicant to provide advice, basically, as to how to meet those requirements. However, it is not a decision-making meeting, okay? The applicant takes the information he receives, and he goes off and he processes it, and then he comes back to the full planning commission with what he determines to be his position as to what he wants to do with that site, okay? So, what you saw in the revised plans that came back were a number of revisions that reflected the input that he received from the concept review meeting. Now, at that concept review meeting, Ann was there, I was there, Brian was there. Unfortunately, due to work commitments, Jay could not be there, so we weren't fully staffed, but even so, it was a productive session, took about 2 hours. And so when you see the revisions on the plans that came from 2 weeks ago to now, it reflects a lot of what's came out of the concept review. Now, the thing of it is, there are also things that did not come forward out of the concept review, where the applicant is wanting things that where the advice basically or suggestions were not incorporated into the plan. Tonight, we're going to focus on those individual issues as we talk with the applicant, and it becomes the full planning commission to listen to the arguments of the applicant to make a determination as to whether, as to what to do in terms of the response. To help guide that process, you will find in your package a letter from me. It's dated Building Blocks Site Plan Submittal, Open Issues from the May 21 Concept Review Meeting. These are the issues on basically 3 pages here, which did not translate into solutions in the site plan. Okay? And these are the things that I'm going to be stepping through with the applicant, essentially one by one. We'll talk about an individual issue, and then the planning commission will hear what the applicant says about it. Everybody will ask their questions, and we'll just move straight through it. And then in the end, like everything else, we take a vote. Okay? So that's the process. But again, the meeting with the applicant was very productive. There was a lot of good dialogue and a lot of good suggestions, and it was a good working session. And that's exactly what it's supposed to be. But again, it's advisory. The applicant chooses to present what he chooses to present, and that's it. And we are the ones that make the decision. Everybody clear on where we are and where we're going? And it was at that meeting, because that meeting was so productive, that we all agreed to try and expedite and move the meeting up 2 weeks to help the applicant. So, this is kind of where we're at. The other thing that has transpired, and you see Chief Porcerelli here in the audience tonight, okay?
Keep us in order.
Keep us in order? Hopefully that's not going to be necessary. Uh-oh, we're in trouble. But because there were select safety issues there, and given the support that I'm sure you all recall how the chief helped us over there with the rowing club and resolving the safety issues of that facility, okay, we thought it would be a very good idea to have that level of expertise to help us again here tonight. And so thank you very much for coming. We will cover the safety items first, so that we don't waste your time on things which are not related to your expertise. The other person I would say that helped us out today was the fire marshal, Russ Boudry, regarding an issue with the underground house, which is on that site. He conducted an inspection for us. He provided input, and again, that sort of support from the township for the commissions is what enables us to be able to make better decisions. So that information will come out this evening as well. So I guess that probably is about the longest-winded introduction I've had in the last couple of years. So at that point, I think I'll stop. Brian, give the overview, please, and then we'll move on with the applicant.
Speaking of long-winded.
Oh.
Sorry, give myself a little segue there. Let me just get this set back up. No, again, a great overview. Thank you, John. You've covered much of what I had planned to discuss, so we're in good shape. As everybody is aware, Mr. Chairman just presented you with the background history of the project. I think we all know why we're here tonight as it relates to the specifics of the project. We're dealing with site plan review. On the screen before you is the revised site plan that was included in your packets. A number of changes, mostly in notation form. There were a number of elements that we went through the petitioner, with the petitioner at the meeting with the officers, and the resolution to most of those was in the form of adding a note to the plan as opposed to a physical change to something on the plan. So you'll notice a lot more notes related to the specifics. In addition, you will notice some other changes which include identification of the 2 parallel spaces on the west side of the building as director parking only, an elimination of 2 of the front drop-off spaces from the original plan. You may recall that there was also an intermediate plan that was discussed at the pre-application conference that was down to 1, but the 1 space now has been strictly identified as infant and toddler drop-off space, so that's another big change. Additionally, some of the other parking information and detail has been provided to the point that I believe, given the agreement with Fifth Third for shared parking, they actually are up to 33 potential spaces that they have use of, which includes 15 shown on site on the site plan and an additional 18 just down the block, there it is right here, which essentially I believe the intent is that your employees would probably use the spaces at the rear of the site, which again are all excess spaces. They have far more parking than is required under ordinance for the bank itself. So those are some of the key changes. What I want to just highlight is a quick summary, and then we can put our focus really into the questions and what some of the concerns are. Make sure that everybody gets on the same page and we get answers to the questions we need. So the first point is for child care centers in the Macomb Street District, there are specific use requirements in your ordinance. We talked about these briefly last time. They relate to outdoor play space, indoor play space, as well as the need to provide the township with a copy of current license. So those standards are met. The only caveat is if approved, when their new license is obtained, they will need to provide a copy to the township for their files. The proposed addition at the rear of the building, as the chairman noted, is a almost 1,500 square foot addition. All dimensional requirements of the Macomb Street District are met for the proposed addition. As I just mentioned, given the shared parking arrangement, the parking standards of your ordinance are met. In fact, there are 4 excess spaces. They are providing 33, at least as proposed, while 29 are required by ordinance. So we've gone from a potential deficiency about 3 or 4 weeks ago to actually an overage. So we're headed in the right direction. The next couple of points are really the concerns that were brought forth in my revised review letter. One is pretty simple. There is an existing AC unit on the east side of the building. We had suggested that unit be screened by whatever means possible, whether it's some kind of hedgerow, a couple of shrubs, potentially even a small wall. I don't remember. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to drive back out there tonight, so I don't remember the specifics of how that unit sets up. But typically, for mechanical equipment in the Macomb Street District specifically, or especially, we do require screening around outdoor mechanical equipment. The new unit on the west side, they have added a hedgerow and some shrubs around that on the plan. We were hoping they could provide similar treatment on the east side. And then really my last 2 points are one and the same. And then I think you could see it. We discussed it last time. The tone comes through in my letter, I think, pretty clearly. There still remains a bit of a concern about circulation pattern at the front of the building, with particular items being the 1 drop-off space immediately in front of the building, and then I suppose to a separate degree, somewhat, the 2 parallel spaces on the west side of the building. Our concerns really are the layout here has the potential to, clog this driveway up. I'm not suggesting that it does or that it's a regular occurrence, but it certainly has the potential to lead to that. This driveway, I can get my mouse working, this driveway is not wide enough for a stopped vehicle and a clear drive pass that vehicle. In essence, if a vehicle is stopped in this driveway, then any vehicle that follows is blocked. They cannot get through, so their access is blocked. Additionally, with these two parallel spaces, there is really no drive aisle, so to speak. So if one car pulls in, if two cars pull in, then the southernmost car is blocked in. Now, granted, if it's the petitioner and his wife, then we talked about that last time. She has the opportunity to block him in and stick him there all day and make him work if she wants. But nonetheless, it's not generally a setup that we like to see where vehicles can be blocked in by traffic. Additionally, because there is not any maneuvering room, it forces sort of this odd movement whereby you kind of have to do almost a three-point turn, not quite a full three-point, but to get out by backing towards the driveway to then make the turn back out to the east to then exit the driveway. So given those potential conflicts in the circulation pattern, we did put forth a couple of suggestions that we thought would be worth discussing tonight with the full commission and the petitioner. The first is, given the excess in parking that we currently have, we would suggest that the two parallel spaces simply be removed from the project. They are, as I mentioned, with the shared parking arrangement, they actually have 4 additional spaces. Eliminating 2 of them keeps them in compliance with the ordinance and prevents us from approving a situation where we have potentially blocked vehicle and/or an awkward turning movement to exit the site. Probably, at least in my opinion, more importantly is the function of this infant-toddler drop-off space. As I've already mentioned, there's the potential for traffic to back up, and whether it's just one vehicle that then is sort of trapped and it blocks the sidewalk, or whether it's multiple vehicles that potentially back out into Macomb Street, that's not generally something that we would like to see. It's not really a functional circulation pattern. The suggestion I had put forth in my letter, at least for discussion purposes, with an understanding that the petitioner has informed myself, staff, as well as the officers during our pre-application conference, as well as to some degree the full commission. Really what they did is they relayed to me the importance to them for their business of this one space in particular, that it's very convenient for their patrons and ultimately is a well-used and a pretty important component of how they operate their business. Keeping that in mind and trying to balance their wants and needs with sound planning practices and local requirements in terms of your parking and loading zone requirements, the suggestion I had put forth was the potential to reverse this circulation pattern. As shown, this is the Westerly Drive, if you can see my mouse cursor, and as shown, it's a one-way in and then basically an exit out into the two-way driveway, which is the easterly driveway. And what I had thought we could attempt, or at least discuss, was if we reverse that pattern such that the westerly driveway is exit only, what we do is we prevent the potential whereby multiple vehicles come in or a second vehicle follows when this space is occupied. If somebody drives in and sees that that space is occupied, they have the ability to continue into the remainder of the parking lot. When you flip that back the way it's shown, if this space is occupied and this is enter only, a vehicle following that parked vehicle has nowhere to go. They can't get around it. We don't want them backing into Macomb Street to then continue back and come down here. They're essentially stuck until that person moves their car. So I thought, at least from a traffic flow situation and a circulation pattern, even just reversing that movement could I guess limit the potential that we have any backup or any conflicts at that driveway. And again, obviously I think this is up for discussion tonight, and this ties in a lot to some of the chairman's questions in the memo, and obviously is a big reason why we have Chief Porcerelli here with us tonight as well. Mr. Chair, that's all I have at this time. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brian. Any initial questions for Brian right now? Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Probably easier if we did it. That worked out well last time.
Unless you've got the complete set. So I think we may be looking at the floor plan then too.
All right. He'll zoom in and out for you, but just be cognizant of what where.
I'd like to, yeah, you're live on the screen, by the way. We can see. But you have to slide it over. I would propose, please, that you make any general comments that you'd like to make about the project, and then we'll get into the specifics kind of one by one. So we systematically step through them. So introduce us to kind of what's changed, and then we'll start to talk.
Sure. Again, thank you for meeting with me earlier than planned. I really appreciate the time and effort you guys have put forth on this.
Brian?
Yeah.
Microphone?
Oh.
Is that working, I hope?
You can try this one, and we'll try this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
That's key.
I'm not hearing anything, Brian. Is that working?
Is that better? It doesn't.
There you go.
The fixed mic was picking it
Yeah,
up?
now we can hear you that way.
Okay. Again, thank you for taking the time to meet with me tonight. I really appreciate it. Some of the things, the basic overview of this is we did add some of the requirements that you were looking at before as far as the landscaping was concerned. We have added another to where the HVAC unit is currently. We've added either it's going to be some Japanese yews, or we're going to put some fencing in around that. Again, there were a lot of questions brought up about the parking and how we run our business. I just wanted you to know that we actually did take a poll. We talked to our parents about eliminating that Circle Drive, and we had quite a few parents provide me with letters saying that that's an integral part of them dropping their children off. I actually have contractors who drop their kids off that pull trailers. So they pull their trailer into that drive, and if we were to eliminate that, they would have to pull into the parking lot or park on Macomb to bring their child in. So there are other issues that are involved in this, and it really is a great service. I mean, we have parents call us when they cross the Free Bridge saying, get our child ready, because they didn't want to take them out in the 20 below weather. So they'll pull right up. We'll actually take the child out to the car to minimize the exposure of that infant to the weather. It just, again, another service that we provide, just telling how important that Circle Drive is to what we do. So really, and the agreement with the bank, they did come back. They are going to allow the extra parking spaces. It is still 1-year contract, but they are going to give me a year's notice. If they have to, for some reason, pull that contract, then I'll be able to make other arrangements, which I've already started looking at. So just to answer your question. Again, that's some of the things that I'll be glad to walk through this process with you.
Okay, then I'll tell you what, let's get started, please, on the questions. And as is always the case, safety is first. Mm-hmm. As we talked about, sorry, Ann? Safety is first, and particularly in the case of here where, you have a thriving business with a lot of children, albeit not as many in the summer as you have in the fall.
Correct.
But you're going to have heavy construction going on. And one of the things we discussed about was ways to mitigate any concern about a child coming in contact with the construction.
Yes.
Okay. If you would slide the plan down a little bit there. In fact, there we go. We'll start with this. The original plan you see on the right where it says covered play area, and it says temporary. You can just barely see temporary there. But that is to be a gravel area, basically to allow construction traffic to the proposed addition at the rear.
Yes.
Okay? We looked at that in the concept review meeting, and we all had concerns about that. Why? Well, because construction traffic driving up the parking way, where kids are potentially getting in and out of cars, where parents are coming in and out, where construction people go back and forth. Essentially, this site will look no different than what commissioners have seen with the bicycle shop going in. The kind of traffic you see there is the kind of traffic that you would see here. With everything from cement trucks to forklifts with the various structural materials on them going back and forth. So we discussed at length about ways to mitigate that. The first, an idea came up that maybe that rather than that isolation is the best approach to keep the kids away. If you never have any cross traffic, you're in the best situation you can be in. Is there a way to achieve that? We asked that question, and the thought was what showed up here on your drawing as a possibility, alternate construction entrance behind the colony. That instead of coming up this main parking area of your business, going to the colony next door and using their driveway to bring trucks in and out. Again, the kids are 100% isolated, 100% protected. We recognized at the time that that was a negotiation, and that anytime you negotiate, the answer could be yes, the answer could be no. Did you talk with those folks?
Oh, absolutely.
And what was their response?
Well, initially her concerns were the construction equipment themselves. They've replaced that drive recently. She was worried about the asphalt being damaged, the drive being damaged, and the people that live at the colony having access to that drive. There was a concern. She has told me that they're going to have a meeting towards the end of this week, some point, that she will invite me to. It's a special meeting with her board to discuss this. So she didn't say no, but she did have some concerns about it. That's Barb, who I did speak with.
Yes.
But we did talk on all the issues that you and I had discussed in that meeting on the 21st. So we discussed the sump pump issue, we discussed the drive. She's definitely open to working with me, provided that they say yes. I realize that could be an issue, that they could say no, but we have a secondary plan in operation. I will let the commission know that this building was added onto some years ago, and all of the core teachers that were involved in that construction process are still there. So they all understand what it takes as far as this construction goes to protect those kids.
Okay, one of the things that I was looking for in your submittal, when we discussed this, we all agreed that, gee, if the colony was able to help, that would be the best solution for everybody. Mm-hmm. Okay, but again, they may say no. If they say no, we needed a clear-cut plan B as to how you were going to manage that construction site with your teachers and your students and those construction people, so that there would be no incidents and there would be no injuries. I did not see anything in the paperwork that addressed the specifics. I put down some of the things things that had been kicked around in the meeting, from hours of operation to Saturday construction. Sure. to things like this. Okay, I saw, and why didn't you prepare a plan B? It's not something I was in that business, okay, in industry, and I know how difficult it is to control a construction site, okay, and that on top of kids. You can't just walk out and wing it. You got to have a specific plan, and I'd like to know why didn't you prepare a plan?
We did prepare a plan. We discussed it the last time as far as the fencing, how we were going to fence all that off. There's 2 gates that are involved in this. The one construction gate is for the construction. The other gate would be for the toddlers to get back into the play area if it was required. The way we run our summer program is different. The kids go to the track. They do exercises out on the track. They go down to the playscape by the post office. There's a lot of different activities that these kids do that they don't necessarily need to get to the play area in the back. So
Okay, Ryan, I'd like to show some pictures, please, and then I'd like to hear from Chief Porcello.
Sure. You mind asking what exactly he's looking for in terms of a plan for staffing and whatnot, because all of the items, every day is going to be a different.
Just for the purposes of
Construction.
Okay. For general information, the picture you see on the screen, where the swings are at, the playground is at, all the toys are at, the rear of the building, this is looking from the driveway of the colony into the construction area. All of that you see there will basically be construction. In addition to the things that you did highlight at the meeting, these are basic ideas that came up. From my experience, is there restricted construction traffic hours away from the normal drop-off? Your normal traffic is from roughly 7 o'clock to probably 8:30 for drop-offs, and probably 3:30 to 5. Are you going to allow your construction traffic to bring things in and out during that period of high volume? That's a question. Are you going to use teachers as spotters? Are you, when a forklift comes in there, are you going to have a teacher out there with the appropriate signage and clearing the way for that construction? Are you going to have days where there's so much activity going on that you won't allow the children outside? Okay, if you know what the construction schedule is and you know what their activities are, then you control that. Okay? What's going to happen to the parking for the contractors? If the parking for the contractors now, if they're going in and out of that same lot that your customers are going in and out of, okay, what's that mean? Or are they going to park somewhere else? What's the plan? That's safety. I mean, are you going to, on some of these, are you going to, when you're closed, have the contractors work on Saturday, when they're free and clear and there is no risk? I mean, the questions for this sort of thing go on and on. Okay? And what I expected to see was something comprehensive, just as the people from the rowing club did. Well, they came in and they told us, this is exactly what we're going to do. Okay, so if you come down there, Swikert, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, and you're watching construction, this is where you're going to see us control it. It wasn't I wish or I hope. This is what we're committed to. It's in writing, and it was validated by Chief Porcelli. Now, what I'd like to do is stop my comment right now and ask the chief to come up and talk a little bit about what construction management means with respect to safety, and perhaps share some comments and maybe take some questions.
Hi, good evening. Today we went down to Mr. Dermody's site and we were just taking a look around down there, and Mr. Dermody was down there. I guess one issue that I would have is I don't have the actual set mapping of where the exact route is for the construction traffic and how that's going to go through there while they're open. But we did talk about the separation. The most important thing is obviously in any area is a separation between vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic, be it drop-offs, be it people walking, be it the workers. Your workers at your business, not the construction workers. So at this point, I just don't know, or I haven't seen anyway the plan, and again, maybe it was given last meeting. I just went through these papers, the ones I received last week. But for the separation of traffic in two kinds, vehicular and pedestrian, it obviously is the most important factor. I don't know what time this is going to be taking place or what time of the season. Your busy season is obviously in the fall and not in the summer, where you have. And then I do know in the summer that they take, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's almost like field trips. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Almost like field trips going down there. But that obviously is a very important factor. I think that, and obviously Mr. Dermody would agree with that as he was speaking before, but I just don't know how that separation on paper or that separation is actually going to occur. I get it on theory, but I haven't seen it in like a practical setup, though, to see where they come from. And if the colony allows them to go through the side there, through the east entrance of the colony driveway, that would probably be obviously his, for liability purposes, just for him and his business would be the best. If they would only be able to use that, and if they can't, then they have to obviously come in through his property on that way, because there's no other way to get in except through the colony and that next door neighbor. That's not happening. So, but that's how important that separation is for pedestrian and vehicular traffic, period. I mean, that's how we set up the schools. When we redid all the entrances to the schools, we made sure that you couldn't get a vehicle, if possible, to where the pedestrians are being dropped off at. And when the parking lot is, to where the bus drops off. We separate that, change that in the future with just, cement curbing and so on and so forth. So, but if there's any questions.
Okay, well, thank you. I think your experience with the schools is relevant here. And, focusing on isolation, which is exactly what all of us were hoping in that concept review meeting, that isolation would occur if the colony were to agree. But again, if it doesn't, okay, you're asking about specifics. I can't tell you the specifics because the specifics are not in the plan. And that is a concern for me. Okay, we're going to stop now, and I'm going to go around the table, and I'd like Commissioner's comments on this point, please. Jay.
Yeah, I guess I'll start by raising a point and then maybe asking a question. The topic of the discussion here, the safety and the like, I'm sitting here thinking about why is it that we're getting into issues we typically don't get into, and I think there is a blurred line there somewhere. We have, I think, some purview into areas of maintaining a minimum amount of safety during a construction process and during the operation of the business that we're approving there. I think maybe where this gets a little strange is that it's a business that's been operating, and so we typically get into like thinking about the rowing club. We're looking at site plan approval there. Is that an acceptable use of that site was the concern, and so that felt more natural to something that we would review. In this case, the operation of it as a daycare preschool is clear. Its acceptability for that use, I think, and it really becomes the construction process, I think, that is the question. Setting that aside, there are a couple, I think, of kind of ongoing safety questions, but I think those are a little more easily fixed and a little more tangible than how are we going to maintain safety during a construction process. So I'm sitting here struggling with this because I'm not sure in my years on the commission, and I haven't been on as long as some, but on more than most, I don't recall having faced these sorts of issues in anywhere near this level of specificity, and so I guess I would turn to maybe Brian or the chair to fill us in on where this comes in, because I can see where we have this need to maintain the minimum level of safety, but I want to make sure that I'm thinking about it right to understand where the handoff is between us and, say, Chief Porcerelli and/or the fire department.
Well, let's ask Chief Porcerelli and first about this. Do you have any authority in regards to this on private property?
On private property, no. I was just asked to give my opinion of just because I was an accident reconstructionist, led our accident reconstruction team, so I've been asked to give opinions on different areas about parking, traffic flow, engineering issues, things of that matter. And that's why I was asked. But no, I do not have authority on private property for issues that would fall under civil liabilities, as opposed to any criminal issues that may occur during an issue or during an accident. And the only time that we would be brought in is if it was negligence, which could lead to possible criminal issues.
Is the same true for the fire, that they have no?
No, the fire department would be a little bit different just because it's a commercial building. A commercial building, the fire marshal has the right to inspect it. They have authority in a commercial building where I don't. Fire Marshal Beaudry can go to an individual, ask to see inside his building, or if, let's just say that individual says no, then he has the right to go in there at certain times and can make it under statute that they go in, which everybody, I mean, I'm on Coleman Street, obviously, they're very good working order with each other, but he does have authority on private property, which I don't.
Is that to general issues, or is that more tied to fire issues? Or
That would be
both?
tied to fire safety issues, any type of inspections such as fire alarms, smoke detectors, unsafe conditions, storing the wrong kind of material, storing wrong kind of containers on your property if you own a business, like a gas station or a repair shop, things like that. That's
Basically NFPA.
Correct, yes.
Type of.
Yeah,
activities.
that's exactly what they use. That is exactly what they use.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly where they derive their administrative law and rule from, is from there.
Okay. So that's part of the answer. Let's go over here to Brian, and let's talk about health, safety, and welfare and the responsibility of the Planning Commission in this sort of an application.
Well, the general intent of the zoning ordinance is to uphold the public health, safety, and welfare, so there's certainly that aspect. The actual construction management and activity is something that's usually delegated to the building official. It's not generally something we get that much into detail at site plan review. That becomes part of the permitting and the construction process. And at that point, again, we defer to the building official's expertise to make sure the safe is operating and set up safely with respect to how it's operating, how equipment and materials are being staged, and obviously what times, days, activities are taking place. I believe the township does have some limitations on weekend work. I believe there are limitations in terms of when you can start, when you have to be finished on a daily basis. But again, those all fall to the building official. So it's not generally something that I throw my hat into.
Okay, let's get specific. How would the building official address construction around the children? Would he?
You're asking the wrong person.
I think I know the answer to the question. The answer is no, he would not. Okay, because that's not what they do. They will come in and inspect plumbing, they will come in and inspect electrical, they will come in and do the things that validate that the type of construction work that is being done is consistent with building code standards. That is what they do. I know that. But in terms of evaluating whether a forklift with a load of bricks on it could travel across, a parking lot with children getting in and out of cars, they'll have nothing to say about that. That's not what they do. So I asked the question, and I'm giving you the answer. Jay?
Okay. So I guess this makes sense, why I had not seen these before, but I can also understand the chair's concern about these things if nobody else is paying attention to these. These are very important issues that we want to make sure are taken care of. I wonder if it also explains why these details were not addressed in the information submitted to us, on the off chance, putting words in the applicant's mouth, which I do not want to do, but I'm wondering if if the specificity was not something that was understood that would be part of this submission. Like I said, I don't want to tell you what to say, but what I heard from the chair, and I unfortunately missed the meeting, was that there were certain items specifically related to the items that are in the letter, which I think you've seen, that were not addressed in the application, the revised application, and the question, I think, was in relative specificity, but generally, why weren't these things addressed? So if you could maybe answer that for us, that would be helpful.
Well, partly because I thought we addressed them in the first meeting, and as far as where the fencing was going to go is for the protection of the children, where the fence was going for the construction equipment to come in, how the children would have access to that back play area provided that they were going to that back play area. I felt that all of those questions I had answered in that first meeting. I didn't realize that you were looking for a hard copy. The summer is a little bit harder for us because we don't have specified times for schooling. The summer is completely different as far as how we run the daycare. So it's harder to establish, what's going on that day. They may be at a field trip. They may be in Ann Arbor or the Toledo Zoo or something along those lines. Those are the times. We already know those days. We already know the days that are set up for all of the field trips. So we know any heavy things that have to happen can happen in that period of time. I did not know that you wanted that written down specifically because it is something that does change, especially in the summertime. But again, but outside of anything, our biggest concern are these kids. We care about these kids on a daily basis. I mean, this is why people bring their children to us, because we care above and beyond other people. So, and again, we have teachers that simply have gone through this exact process. They were there the last time this construction went on. And they know exactly what has to be done. And they will never allow a child to have access to either the construction zone, or if they see something going on in the parking lot, they're right there. I don't have to tell them. I mean, that's just the amount of care that these ladies take on a daily basis. And, I thank them for that on every day. But I would not be able to do this without them. I will be there during this entire construction process. That is my responsibility, not only as the business owner, but as somebody watching the general contractor, and whether or not we do work with the colony, making sure that they're not doing anything outside of their scope. So I have a lot of responsibility on that, but unfortunately it does vary. I mean, it may be a day, you may have a day that you say, okay, we're going to do the pouring of the footing today, and it rains. So now I got to shift everything around, so I have to be flexible in those types of situations. I can't simply say, okay, this day we're going to do this day we're going to do this, especially with children. It just, you have to be able to be flexible. What I want to make very clear to all of you is that we do care. We will make sure that no child, we make sure that right now. We don't have any construction going on, but our base, the focus of what we do on a daily basis is protecting those children. So, I don't know if that answers your question, other than the fact that I didn't know we needed to be that specific. And I will take that as my responsibility, that I didn't know I needed to be that specific for you, Mr. Chair. I apologize.
Steve. Oh, I'm sorry, Jay. Do you have more comments?
I was going to ask what the scope is that I was asked to speak on. Is it
scope,
safety
yes.
Only?
Only this item.
Only the safety. Okay.
Only the children's safety in construction.
Okay, then...
We will come back to other topics in a minute.
I'm done.
As soon as other commissioners have a chance to voice their thoughts, concerns, and opinions.
Okay.
Steve.
Good evening. Definitely a tough discussion tonight so far. In the context of the scope of just safety, I do still feel a little blurred on the lines if I have my Planning Commission manual in front of me and kind of the scope of this discussion. So definitely, I disclose that to the commission. I think this is a little bit of a gray area. I fully respect you. You're the expert with the kids, and you know how to run your business, but it would be nice in regards to safety to have a few of those things understood, that yes, the commitment, I will have a spotter when there is things being lifted in the air. I will make sure that, A, B, C, and D were going to be done would be great. In regards to safety with the colony, I'd like to hear that you have asked and kind of put that burden on the contractor, that if they're going to use this and the colony says yes, and they're going to access everything they can to the most part ability, for this project that they can on the colony side, that any road damage, they will incur 100% of the fix. Those are some of those things that you could be bringing forward. And
Well, I can answer that question. I've talked to my lawyer about this. So how it works is that I enter into an agreement with the colony, saying that ultimately I'm responsible if there is any damage that's occurred. And then, so I get into an agreement with the colony based on that. Then I get into a separate agreement with my general contractor saying, okay, it's on you now that if you cause any damage, you have any issues along those lines, you're going to take care of it. But my responsibility would be to the colony as the business owner, as the neighbor, and then it would be the general contractor is responsible to me because I am paying him.
Correct.
So that's how that would go. So those are all things that are in the discussion. as far as with the colony right now. Again, because I'm not meeting with them until later this week, I don't know what how that's going to.
The only other thing for safety is, what is the scope of this project as far as the length of the duration for the project?
Oh, it'll be, that's the thing, they want to do it in the summer.
So we're talking 2 months, we're talking 3 months, 8 weeks, 10
2
weeks?
months.
Okay. 2-month project,
Yep.
okay.
There's really not a lot to it. Once we get down to the construction part, it's just a box.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mickey?
Just as background, I have 2 children, and if I could, I'd bubble wrap them. But, I know some of the women that you have there and some of the folks babysitting that, they're parents and they have the same instincts that the rest of us have. And I'm sure, this concern is not just ours, it's yours as well. And I'm just wondering how we can move forward, if maybe during this we can make some recommendations, and if that could help you to put Plan B down in writing. It may be things even where, when you're going to have the heavy construction, at a minimum, you take them to the park behind the post office on that day, and that gives you a little flexibility there.
Well, that is the plan. That I just didn't write it down. I didn't know that was actually as necessary as it appears to be tonight.
Yeah, and I wonder if you can take this document, at least we're saying from the concept review meeting, and take a chunk of that out, and that's a good start towards getting it down in writing.
Sure.
So, but other than that, I think this document addresses a lot of the concerns. I'd also hope we move on later to address the rest of the concerns in this. I think, the fencing, the landscaping, those types of things. But I do think this document contains a lot of good information.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. Ann? Eric?
Yeah, no, Mr. Chair, I appreciate your concern. I think it was definitely a significant concern when we were doing the site plan review for the boathouse, because that was a daily event. This is a temporary construction event, and I'm satisfied that the applicants can have the right safety plan during this construction.
Brian?
I have no further comments. I'll just, I would be repeating what Eric is saying.
Jim?
Thank you. Obviously, safety first. I don't think anyone here could sleep at night if we weren't putting that first and foremost. So a plan would be nice to see. But I do recall from the last meeting, the fencing, there would be some separation. It's not complete separation because you have to cross the parking lot to get to that fenced-in area, but I do remember seeing the fenced-in area, and I get that part of the plan. And I think anything at this point in time would just be repetitive. So,
thank you, Jim. Ann?
Well, the only question I'm thinking about right now, you have a unique situation because you are bordered on a private road. If it were a public road, it would be a different thing for you, because your complications are built into the construction process.
With the colony?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because that's a private road, and it makes it harder. But the next thought I had was, is there any chance you could eliminate the outside play area for the children?
You mean entirely?
For safety, yeah, right.
You mean block it off until the construction is finished?
Yeah, because your major construction is going to be the cement base and the outside of the building, isn't it?
Yes.
So that would be the hardest part.
Yeah, again, being the summer, we do have a lot more flexibility to do what we need to do as far as accessing other areas of the island, and we do take full advantage of that. That would be an option.
Well, and I was thinking, you said you scheduled programs to go different places.
Yes.
That could be increased to keep activity going from the outside to play area.
Yes. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, we've been around the table. There's been a mix of opinions. My opinion is hope is not a strategy. Hoping that ladies who did something 10 years ago will do it again is not a strategy. If you can't present a specific plan, okay, then I will not be able to support this. What I'd like to do is take you up on what you said. You have the plan in your head.
Sure.
Okay? I'd like to see this plan documented. I'd like to see it submitted to the township. I'd like to have Chief Porcelli provide the technical input, as he did with us on the rowing club over there, provide his expertise into it such that he can come back to the Planning Commission with a letter that says, I have confidence that this plan will safely protect the children of this island at that facility, and that it's your job to execute it. That's what I would like to see. Are you in agreement with that?
I have no problem with that.
Okay. Any comments? Okay, item number 1 resolved. Okay, so this will become a condition of approval. And there'll be a time limit that we'll need to place on this, because this has to be in place, and our chief has to validate this before the first truck rolls. Okay?
Can I add one thing?
Please.
I just want to add again, without having my planning commission book in front of me, and I do respect the years of experience on this panel up here, but I do worry we're going down a slippery slope with the amount of emphasis and detail and in written documentation. Where are we going to uphold this for everyone coming before us again? That's my only reservation. I understand the importance of it. I get all those things. I'm just concerned that for the next 5 projects presented to us, what is this slippery slope that we may be going down?
Yes, and that is a valid concern. And I can say categorically, having been on this commission since 1991, I have never seen a project that had the interrelationship between an ongoing business and construction like this one does. This is the only one I can think of where an ongoing business being modified has this kind of potential safety implication. I mean, when you weren't around, well, when those of us who were here, maybe Ann was, but we did the competitor, Kitty Campus, across the way. Okay, Kitty Campus was a field, okay, when we started. And so the issues that we faced there on Kitty Campus were only tied to the final end result. There wasn't anybody there to get in the way, if you know what I mean. Okay? But we held that facility to a very high standard. I mean, we you know, to make absolutely certain that all of us, you know, for the playground fencing and all the things that needed to be done were done. Okay? And what's unique about this, Steve, is the fact that it's making a major change to something that's already there, and I recognize this is something you've never seen, and I quite frankly have never seen it. But you know, again, the idea of getting from where we are to where we want to be, which is an expanded business, which is thriving on gross yield, and doing it in a fashion which has no negatives, is why we're doing this. I don't know that I've explained it well.
I guess the blurred line for me, though, is, again, back to Chief Porcelli's point about private property. You have private property here with this business. You have private property of homeowners who are adding expansions of 8,000, 9,000 square feet, you know, additions, pools, homes, where the same level of security and safety scrutiny is not there with the same size equipment. I'm just nervous of a slippery slope, and I would not be doing this commission justice if I'm not sharing that with you, because I feel we all should be worried about that. You know, definitely put Chief Porcelli in an awkward position, because how much will he commit to in writing or not? It's a slippery slope.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is the front drop-off. Let's see what we have in the way of pictures here. Okay, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So what we're talking about here, this is a picture from the Colony Drive at the street, looking basically east or slightly southeast at the facility. The issue at hand is essentially the paved area that you see there, and you can see basically in the background, you can see a yellow bumper that's in there. The existing situation, again, was discussed at length at the concept review meeting, and what it basically boils down to is that while it is talked about as being a drop-off zone, in reality, there are other. It's more than that. It's more than that because of essentially traffic flow. And what happens there is that, having gone down, I'm not by no means an expert, but I went down there, on a morning just to watch what went on. What are the traffic patterns? And, what I saw was, a car was stopped and parked basically right on the bumper, or around the bumper there. And that car was there for approximately 20 minutes. That aisle width is not wide enough for another car to get by. Another lady came in with her child and pulled in, kind of in the front here, around where this black car's at, and pulled in and paralleled the sidewalk. She got out, took her little kid in there, and came back out, and the car was still parked in front of her. So her answer, the only thing she could do was to turn around and back out across the sidewalk, back out onto Macomb, and then proceed on her way. It was also interesting to note that another man came in at the same time, and his answer to this was he pulled into the driveway farther on down, and he pulled into the first slot past the handicap, which is basically by that white SUV that's there by the house, and carried his kid across the way and brought the kid, the little stroller in or whatever, and then went on his way. This is another issue with respect to traffic management. It's another area, a reason why Chief Porcelli was asked to comment about this. During the concept review meeting, there was discussion of a couple of options here. One option in specific, and then another creative option came up afterwards, after the meeting, that I believe Brian thought of. Okay, but essentially, this is the front of the building. That's the front steps going up to the front. Just one side comment. I think you might, I'm not quite sure what those are. Are those? Is that a child safety fence? Is that what that is?
It's a nap mat.
A what?
A nap mat.
They're like cots.
They're cots. When the kids take naps, they are on the cot rather than being on the floor. And when they have the infants out there, they take the infants out on the front porch to give them a little fresh air. They'll put the nap mat in front of the door, in front of the entryway, so that the kid can't go out onto the steps.
Okay, well, I think
they're infants, so they don't move very fast.
Okay. All right. Here's the other view of the front. Okay, and the car was parked there. The solution that was discussed as a possibility in the concept review meeting was to change the traffic flow into the building. Basically, where you see on the left, you see the border by the side of the building, the fence by the side of the building there. Put a step there. And so that now this whole parking area that's immediately to the left of this screen is directly accessible to the porch without having to walk in front and come in the front door. That offered, when we talked about it, it came up as a possibility that now, without that in there, two things don't happen. First is that this drive in the front now becomes grass. It now becomes landscape. It becomes part of, so that this building now looks like other buildings along Macomb where it's not cement, it's green. The second thing this does is there's a second traffic issue here, which we were made aware of, was that cars coming around and pulling in and coming in front of the building sometimes come and turn right into the parking lot. Okay, and when they do that, they sometimes go too fast, hence the need for the speed bump. Okay, and we discussed this at the concept review meeting. And at one point, I believe Chief Porcelli was asked if there's anything you do about people speeding around that corner, and the answer was no, for the reason that he specified earlier, it's private property. Okay, so there were two traffic issues with what's there. People ending up not being able to use it effectively because cars stop. People can't get out, they have to back onto Macomb, and when they do turn right, they basically have the opportunity to turn right too fast. when we left the meeting, that was the only option that we came up with as an alternative, was to relocate the 2 front steps and come in the side. Okay? After that meeting, Brian came up with an idea about making essentially one-way traffic. And that one-way traffic, Brian, was coming from the direction you see on the screen, turning right, basically stopping in front, and then moving on through. And what that option provides is that if a car comes in and stops in front, like the lady that was there for 20 minutes, okay, for whatever reason, and stop that from being an unloading zone, now that person who pulls in behind can now go straight, make a turnaround, in an open parking spot, which is adjacent to this building, turn around and make a safe exit back onto Macomb. That was the option that came up after the meeting. Okay, those are the only 2 that I was aware of. What were your opinions on either one of those at this point?
Oh, we were in complete agreement with the one-way, moving it the opposite direction. That makes perfect sense to us. Again, for the fact that we do have contractors that come in with trailers, that would be a perfect solution to that situation.
Your drawing shows the one-way the opposite direction.
We had, if we
It was Friday that that Brian stumbled on this brainstorm. It was kind of those, why didn't we think of that?
Okay.
It's a darn good idea. I think one of the other things to note that we actually did talk about 3 things at the meeting, the 3 options. One was to do nothing, or to leave the current condition the way it was. And I think one of the reasons that Chief Porcelli is here is to address the issue of, have there been any conflicts out there historically? This driveway's been there since as long as I was dropping my kids off there. And so we said, well, what is it, I would rely on experience as much as I would on planning principles to say, what is the conflict here? And to my knowledge, there haven't been any traffic issues in that area.
Let's hear from Chief Porcelli. Would you talk to us in general about traffic pattern as it relates to this particular situation?
Yes, I guess there's 2 issues here. First, let me answer this one question. On Macomb Street, after the change of the area of the bakery, was about the last years that we used to have a lot of vehicles backing into traffic and people not being able to see, but the way the parking is set up. But we have not had the issues that I can recall in the many years I've been here, for the Macomb Street here is what you're speaking about.
We were asking you.
Yes. And what I did is I looked at that, and when we reviewed the turnaround, and I certainly can appreciate Mr. Dermody's reason for having this. It's a business issue, so if it can be done and been a win-win for everybody, I think it's the best thing. To reverse this, when we looked at this, what you're taking away is the competition for a space or an area. And what I mean by that is when you come from the right side of the screen to the left and you're pulling out, you're competing with people pulling in from Macomb, and you're competing with people pulling out of your parking lot. So just to show that Mr. Dermody says, we really would like to keep this because, again, it's a business aspect. Reversing this to come from the east to the west would enable people to come, drop people off, pull out, and there's no competition now. And pulling forward is so much safer always than backing up into traffic. Nobody wants people backing up into traffic if you can help it in any way. Just like anybody that lives on a busy street that has to back into traffic, sometimes they back into their drive so they don't have to back out. Backing into the drive is much safer than coming out the other way. So the bottom line here is if this works for you, I think it's a win-win for both because there isn't that competition for the space anymore. And you won't have any times. I guarantee in the morning, it is busy there in the morning. We don't have the backups because the school buses, they're out on the street and they have their lights on. But individuals that may have had to back up going from, it would be west to east, back out of Macomb, I guarantee you wouldn't be able to do that the opposite way. There's too many cars still coming in that lot. I mean, you couldn't get a space open. There's too many people coming in for their drop-offs for their kids, which would show those drivers to do things correctly. And I think the switching of it wouldn't be a big deal. You'd need one sign or an email to tell them.
We've already discussed the option of, or the telling all of the parents that this is the new responsibility. We'll have signs.
You could, and it's not that big a deal to get the one-way sign. I can help Mr. Dermody out with that. And if I can just digress just for a second, back when I think Mr. Lemoyne was talking about it, I've been asked before to speak, for the Planning Commission and just give recommendations, again, from my engineering and accident reconstruction expertise. I'll be more than happy to work with them in any way you want. I'll be more than happy to put something on paper. When I put it on paper for those other groups that I worked with that you've asked me to come to work with, I'm not going to put anything on paper that isn't what's in my heart and I know is the right thing. And if there's any questions about it, we deal with it, just like we did the nighttime testing at the other thing on West River Road there. Just so I was 100% sure whatever I said was going to work, I did it myself. So whatever Mr. Dermody needs, anything on this, I'll be more than happy to work with them, more than happy to come up with a letter when we come up, obviously, with a conclusion, decision, or resolution to whatever the Planning Commission would like to see. And I have no problem with that. I mean, I'll do that at any time, and I'll make time for them this week if we need to start on it. I have no problem with that.
Fantastic.
So,
Thank you.
but that's the other issue, the second one, the first question that you had. I hope I answered both of them for you.
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
Okay, so you've heard the scenario that was presented at the concept meeting. You've heard the new idea that came from Brian after the meeting. You've heard the applicant's comments along with the chief. Run around the table. What's the opinion? Jim.
I like the idea of reversing the flow of traffic from the east to the west. Makes sense to me. I do, I have no problem with the turnaround area up front. Once again, I think I mentioned that last meeting. Taking my kids there in past years, I've never had a problem with that area, but I do like the reverse traffic idea. It sounds safer to me.
Thank you. Brian?
While I do understand where the applicant is coming from and understand, if all things being equal, he'd prefer to keep that horseshoe driveway in the front. And I must preface that the comments that I'm about to say, I struggle with internally because I'm not sure how much applicability or teeth we have to enforce this based on that the additions and such are on the back of the building. But this is a business district. This is our downtown development area. It's supposed to be our pedestrian-friendly area where we're trying to build up and create a walkable, bikeable experience. For that reason, when we have new projects coming in, we don't allow front yard parking usually. If we do, it's in a very rare exception. It just doesn't fit with the development patterns with the downtown area. So, what we're talking about here is essentially a horseshoe driveway. And again, I understand from a circulation standpoint, all things being equal, you prefer to keep that there. But since we've been talking about this already, I bring this stuff up now. By having, those two driveways, as well as a driveway adjacent to the parcel on both the west side and east side, we effectively have 4 driveways, in this small little tight area. And within planning, within roadway operations, we look at things for access management, so controlling the number of driveways. And that's because they create different conflict points, especially for pedestrians and bicyclists who might be on that sidewalk. So that's probably one of the most most of the crashes are happening at intersections and driveways, especially if you're along the side of the road rather in the middle of the road, in the actual lane. So from a pedestrian and bicycle standpoint, there's definitely conflicts in that area. Additionally, the applicant said that there's people that have trailers on their vehicles that are coming into that area. So before we were talking about our concerns with having 3 parking spots in that horseshoe driveway area, and we essentially in that pre-application meeting, you're saying that you didn't care for that. So if we are having automobiles or trucks coming in with trailers, we're effectively back to that, where we're talking about essentially the length. It's effectively the same thing as 2 or 3 cars queuing up in that area. So additionally, when we're talking about a pedestrian environment, within the review, they talk about having the sidewalk along the area and then the sidewalk along the building. But there's actually no connection from the building sidewalk to the general sidewalk on Macomb. So pedestrians are coming and walking in front of these driveways. So again, another conflict point. So based on all that information and what Mr. Borden and you, Mr. Schweikart, have talked about with the different options, and also potentially what I believe we'll talk about in a little bit about potentially removing that tenant parking alongside the building, I think it makes most sense at least to entertain the notion of closing down that driveway as well as the parking in the front, and better utilizing the one driveway on the east side, as well as potentially looking at providing a connection, a sidewalk connection, like you were mentioning. So you were talking about on this west side over here, opening up that fence so that way there were steps going up. We could also potentially do that on the other side and provide a sidewalk if that driveway is closed and those parking spots are eliminated to the Colony Drive. So if effectively you could have a sidewalk going up from Colony and going to that porch, as well as you'd have the other side where people that are parking within the building blocks parking lot could gain access, and you don't have to come through that front area. Or you could have that pedestrian connection directly in the front where the existing entrance is. That leads up for more green space, as well as within that green space we could be putting a park bench, or we could be putting a bike rack. I just think it makes a more attractive environment, and the only reason I'm mentioning most of these details is because this is in the downtown area. Otherwise, I would have no problem when we're talking about this horseshoe driveway and the circulation. But that being said, if we're not going to be entertaining the notion of eliminating that still, I would go towards the option of reversing the circle drive orientation, making it one way. But I think that we need more than just signage or letting the parents know that you're supposed to be that the orientation has changed. I think we should be looking at a few geometric changes to the driveway to ensure that nobody's going to be coming in from Macomb making that right into the horseshoe driveway anymore.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry for being long-winded here.
No, that's okay. This is important. Eric.
Yeah, no, Brian brings up some great points, and certainly I'd prefer to eliminate the driveway in the front, but I don't think it's practical for this site without an extreme amount of expense for the applicant. I mean, it's not a perfect site. I think the improvements that are proposed are definitely improvements, but I think if we go to the one-way traffic, that's going to be enough to get this through.
Thank you, Eric. Mickey.
Do I understand correctly that when you reverse the flow, then when the parent pulls in and they have the infant, they're going to be on the side closest to the building, right?
Yeah.
Open their door and...
Normally what they do is, depending on how, right now they put them on the passenger side because then they're exiting toward the closest, but yeah, they'll transfer it to the other side so that the child is on the driver's side, so they have the quickest access to the building.
Yeah, because I was just thinking with the brutal winter that we had, the thought of if they were pulling in the opposite direction, and then if they got the baby out the same side as the driver, then you're now carrying, because you have the carrier down low behind the vehicle or in front of the vehicle where there's other cars. That kind of eliminates that.
Yes.
And so I think it'd be a lot easier, plus they're not walking as far in the ice and the snow and the bad weather. They're right in the building. So I like that. I think that's a really good idea, so kudos to Brian. I also like that in the picture you're backed in, because now I can visualize you're just going to pull around that circle and back right in, and when you leave, you have clear visibility.
Right.
And if it ever comes down to where there's so much traffic that you don't have time to do that, you're the owner, you know better. You pull out and you wait for them to get in there and you go back around.
Correct.
So I honestly think your spots on the side work fine like that, because I think I heard that you put signs up that it's for the directors only or something to...
Yeah, we have ordered signs that say that.
Yeah, so I like that. I think it's all a good compromise. I think it helps with safety, too.
Thank you, Mickey. Steve.
So yes, I am in favor of reversing the entrance as far as pulling in the different direction. And no, I'm not in favor of saying open up your porch for a different entrance. You're the business owner, you understand the traffic flow. If that's something you want to do to attract more customers, you'd be doing it.
Thank you.
Jay.
Yeah, I think most of my thoughts have been expressed, and in fact, I think I share most of the thoughts on both sides. But I think in the end, following on Steve's point, if you think that this makes sense for your business, this business has been here for a long time, operating the way it has. That Circle Drive has been there a long time, operating the way it has. I have never sat there and watched the traffic flow. Probably should have to do my job, but I've never seen an issue there. I think reversing it makes sense for a lot of the reasons that were raised. I would support you making the business decision based on the reasons that you gave to leave that there. I would also support leaving the side parking spots with the marking and enforcement of it. I'm sure there's a reason. I would guess you guys are in and out more often than maybe the teachers are, so therefore having those ready access points would be easier for you.
We also use that when we decorate the float. We actually park the float there and decorate it for the parades.
So I would not. I would be supportive of the reverse position, reverse direction, if that's what makes sense for you.
Okay, there seems to. I'm sorry. That seems to be the consensus. So. Ann, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Actually, the east-west travel, it makes it easier to get into the parking side of your building on the east side. So it makes it easier for them to get there.
Correct.
You might need a traffic cop to get them used to the site.
Thank you, Ann. That leads to one other safety issue, and that is relative to what you see in front of you now. This is the director's parking. This was discussed at length. Okay, again, as an item relevant to the same issues that Chief Porcelli talked about in terms of access to and from Macomb Street. According to our ordinances, Brian, are those even legitimate parking spaces?
As to, certainly not. They're not, at least they're not shown to the appropriate parallel parking space dimension. Additionally, there's no actual drive aisle to access them. If you think of accessing a parallel space, you have room for a drive aisle and room for a space on the other side. So there's those two issues. There's also the issue of sort of the mismatched direction of the vehicles, as is actually really perfectly shown in the picture. As you get one pull in, you get one back in, and again, as I mentioned earlier, you then block or you restrict the potential for the first vehicle in if you put a second vehicle there. So in other words, I mean, the gist of it is those spaces do not meet your parking standards in Article 12.
Okay. I will share with you the discussion that took place at concept review. The first question was, why are those there? The answer basically was that these are legacy parking spots. This building goes back to the time before there was the colony. Okay, before there was a bank down the street for shared parking. And in the case of then the only parking spots that were available, basically to the owner, as it is today, before this plan comes through, are the spots for the drop-off, the 13 spots that are in the parking lot on the opposite side of this building. And right now, the 3 spots, okay, and you can tell basically there are 3 spots here, it's not 2. The 3 spots help to relieve the employees from being in the spots where the customers, the mothers and fathers, need to come in, high speed, 5-minute turnaround time, to drop their children off and or pick their children up. They need those spots for high turnaround. Now again, I'm not an expert, but all I did was go look. And in the span of watching in that one morning, I noticed that basically, one of the spots over here was filled up. There were 4 spots or 5 spots occupied, but with employees on the far side, with cars, at least I could tell. And then parents were coming in and pulling in and out in the remaining spots. It got down to the point where there was 1 spot left in that lot. Okay? And if that spot was taken, then the next car in is going to have a difficult time. Either it's going to have to wait, okay, or park in a spot that then obstructs and potentially requires someone to back out onto the street. So what you see with all this is a result of a legacy. The plan that's put forward now puts 16 spots over in the park, in the bank. Okay? These 3 spots over here now become absolutely unnecessary. They by our own agreement, and we talked about how you use them. You, in fact, told us that frequently you will actually use the bank parking spots, okay, when you would come in and out, okay, and all this does is make it for a shorter walk. That is not a business critical reason. And when we talked about it at the meeting, I was under the impression that when you went back to the bank and you added the spots at the bank, because you went from 13 to 16 or 17 or something, okay, that those extra spots were to accommodate 2 things. One, the transition of temporary employees or part-time employees, some coming in, some going out, so you always had adequate parking, and you could accommodate these spots here, so that now this, which now, by the way, is next to the access to the colony. This is not a field. This is a main entrance into that association. This now becomes an opportunity to improve the site. This is discretionary parking. It does not meet the requirements under any definition about parking. It's stacked parking, and we don't allow that. So, you know, that was the gist of the discussion, and I was rather actually quite surprised that you left this in the plan based on when we left that meeting. Okay? I guess there's something that I didn't understand when we left the meeting, because I was under the impression that you had concluded that for the beautification of the area, for making it nicer for the colony, and for the improvement to your site, that these 3 would go away, and that you would be using the bank. So there's an instance where I did not understand what you said. So please clarify for me. Okay, I've related what the discussion was in the meeting. Okay, so please, if you would, comment and tell us why these are business critical for you.
Well, actually, we provide snack for all of the kids. We go and buy that, and we use these spots when we are unloading our cars as far as any kind of juices or big boxes of cereal. Anytime we do the laundry on the weekends, we bring it back, we bring it to these spots so that we're not carrying it over from the bank. But again, these spots, they are discretionary, but we're using them when we need to use them, which is a limited basis.
Okay, now with this plan, you will have 13 spots open for customer transition in and out with their kids coming in and out. Okay, you could not, for the things of bringing in juice, use one of those spaces as opposed to occupying a spot like this?
It's, again, just familiarity. It's just easier to walk in the front doors from this area than it is to park in that side lot and then walk through the parking lot with all of those amenities and then go into that front building. We go in the front building, in the front of the building, because the refrigerators are up there for the infants. The infant room, both toddler rooms are up there. So it's a convenience more than anything. And we don't park in the Circle Drive.
So you're telling me, if you look at that picture where the white car is at on the far side, it's better for you to get to your porch than parking over here on the left as opposed to the right?
Right, because the people come in that parking lot to drop off their kids.
What you already stated is that a minimum pickup period, and by your own admission in the meeting, those spots are empty most of the time during the daytime, and it's only during the high-use period when you, as the owner of the facility, an operator, you stay away from there, okay? Otherwise, you even told us yourself that in the middle of the day when the cars are not there, when there is no transit, you know, it's not your peak period, you use the spot on the far side. You told us that as well. Okay.
I will park where I need to park based on what I have to do.
Exactly.
As the business owner.
Okay. I'll stop. That was the discussion. Let's go down to Steve. Yes, please.
So the context of, again, the scope of these spaces, my opinion, you are the business owner. This is your private space. If that's where you need to park to maintain your business, to do your business operations, I'm not here to ask for someone to write you a ticket on that spot, nor do I think they could even write you a ticket on that spot. You're going to do what's best for your business. keeping everybody safe, keeping the business going, that type of thing. If that means parking there, so be it. If you can park where those other two vehicles are, so be it. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Steve. Mickey?
On this, I think they're adding the spots, but you also think you hope to have additional children there once you add those spots. So I think you're going to need more, right? You're going to have more cars coming in. I don't have an issue as long as it's just you and the other owner. I'm sure you have a set of her car keys and she has a set of yours. I just from when I used to go there, I think it is probably easier to unload from that spot. I think it would work out okay.
Thank you, Mickey. Eric?
Yeah, I'm really torn on this one. I mean, the chairman brings up a good point where you could make some beautification improvements to the entire district by eliminating those spots and putting some type of shrubbery in there. But to me, I'm conflicted a little bit because there's in general not enough parking on Macomb, and even though these are discretionary spots, I think they're very useful to this particular site. Yeah, I don't know if I've got my mind made up yet on this, but I think I'm leaning in favor of allowing the spots to be there. I'm not a big fan of that trailer back there, but I'm assuming that was a short time period.
That was for the parade.
Thank you, Eric. Brian?
I think the horseshoe driveway is a bigger issue than this side parking over here. Again, I'm looking at it from a non-conforming use. Is like if we're talking about a new building, we wouldn't be allowing this at all. But since the non-conforming, this area isn't being added upon, so it's not under our jurisdiction. I don't think we have any say in how this is being done. And if we're not going to be touching the horseshoe driveway, I don't think we should be touching this parking area either.
Thank you. Jim?
I don't see a huge concern with it. If this is a single-family residence and they had a driveway, they would have the same situation. Husband and wife would park in front of each other. They have to back out to let each other out. I don't see any other issue. There's never been an issue in the past. And quite honestly, I think it was mentioned earlier, with the change of the direction of the traffic pattern pulling in from the east to the west, it just makes sense that you could pull in and back right into that spot. So no problems here.
Ann?
I don't have an issue with them either. I think they've done the other things we've wanted.
Thank you, Ann. Jay?
Yeah, I find it somewhat compelling, the idea that we, thinking back to our rules and how this works, and I think I would understand the rules correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, that when there's a revision to an existing use, we have a certain amount that we can exact to bring things up to standards, but only a limited amount. We can't bring everything up to standard. This would fall into that. I think there are other more important things that we're after here. One thing that I think would be helpful, though, is if those were striped. I would kind of add that as a proposal, that those be striped, which would indicate that, like, where that trailer is would be one spot, and then where the SUV is would be a second spot. So that would pull the second car back out of the kind of the front,
Sure.
which I think would be helpful visually.
Sure.
And then kind of make those the parking spots. I think then it makes for a more attractive view, which I think gives us a good balance of what we're trying to accomplish with overall beautification of the street, with granting the use to a private owner. I think that's a good balance, in my mind at least.
Okay. So the consensus, what I'm detecting is to leave basically the area alone with some striping, basically. Consensus? Okay. Then let's move on. Architecture. We'll cover this quickly. There's one more. Matter of fact, let's go to one more safety issue, and then the chief can leave. It's the last item. It's the underground structure. It's not generally recognized, but that the back part of the property, this area in here, there was an underground house that was on that site. And the house or the structure for it, obviously it's not livable anymore, is still there. The fence that you see here, I don't know if I have any more pictures of this. Let's see. No. Yeah, well, okay. Most of this fence inside is an area where there are some things, protrusions basically, that came up from that house. This fence was discussed at the concept review meeting, is in pretty sad shape, and as part of this application, the applicant agreed to basically take all this down pending state approval.
Correct.
Okay, and replace it with basically chain link fence. This is a major eyesore elimination. Okay, there are a couple of issues that relate to this underground structure, and the chief and the fire marshal took a look. We have outside the fenced area. This is in the rear. Okay, this is a piece of 12 or 14 inch PVC pipe that's sticking out of the ground. Okay, this is a plastic bucket which is wedged in there to seal it off. This back here, if you can see from the mouse, is a grate. This looks like to be like 4x4s of wood, and it's got a steel grate across it. Okay, this is outside the fenced area for this facility, and as such, this is, well, you can see by here, this is a child's play area. Okay, this raised a basic concern, and this is where Fire Marshal Russ Boudry came into the picture. And he came back and met with Chief Porcelli while I happened to be there. Could you summarize, please, what he said, he thought about this, as well as commenting on, he went down into the structure itself and commented on the integrity.
Yes, he went down there, and I'm not sure, were you with him at the time when you went in there, obviously?
I took him down.
Yeah. So they looked at that, and they came up with a general consensus that this could probably just be taken out with a backhoe and filled in with dirt. And the other area, which is the square, I'm not sure with the grading, that's it, where the mouse
Right
is. With the grading there, could be capped, and there would be absolutely no issues for the children getting, somehow getting down there, getting in there, getting stuck in something like that.
And I gathered that you were in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay, and you're in agreement that can be added as part of the site plan?
Yes.
Okay. Issue addressed. Very good. Thank you. The last item on this building is more your relationship again with the colony, but again, it's important from a planning perspective. If you look at the, doggone it, I wish there was an index to pick from. There is an issue. There is a running sump pump in that basement, in that house.
There was a drain problem, wasn't it? Where it was draining on the roof?
Yes, it drains. Here is what happens, and we talked about this at the meeting. This basement collects water. There's a sump pump just on the opposite side of this fence right there. It drains here, the water runs out, this entire area floods. Okay, what was a large tree is dead and has been replaced, and this runs into the main area here and drains. Okay, we discussed about options that you might have to resolve this, because clearly dumping your sump water onto the adjacent property is not the most neighborly thing to be doing. I think if it were reversed, you would probably have a few things to say about it. Okay, and what we were looking for was a solution to this problem as part of the overall underground house basic management. Mm-hmm. That was the issue that was presented out there. Would you comment on this?
I've talked to Barb at the Colony about this. She is in agreement with me that they're willing to work with us and figure this issue out. Right now, we pay, when they clean out their drain, we pay a portion of that based on usage. It's some percentage of the cost. So we discussed some other options as far as this is concerned. If we do if they do grant us access to the Colony Drive for construction, we might be able to, and again, pending what the state is going to allow me to do with this fence.
Yep.
We're going to make some changes and working with the Colony, try and figure out a better way to have this drain. So
Okay, so there is a commitment that this will be resolved.
Absolutely.
You know, in a fashion which is consistent with your needs and their needs.
Yep.
And the state.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay, if no comments on that, we'll move on.
Why is the state involved in that? I'm curious.
Because the underground house is there, and the steps that go down into the underground house, it's a tripping point. They did not want to have the children view that at all, so they wanted that fenced off for protection of the kids, just because if they see it, they want to do it. Right.
It all relates to daycare, basically. Daycare regulations. State daycare standards. Okay, let's look a little bit at the architecture, right quick. Chief, I think we're all set with you. Thank you very much for your input.
Call me if you need anything, anybody.
And always, we always count on you. You come through.
Thank you. Take care. Good night.
Thanks.
Okay, one of the improvements you made, again out of the concept review, we have windows running down the side of the existing building, and the new addition didn't have, and you looked at that, and I believe we ended up with false windows or facades?
No, they're actually operable windows. We added a window to the bathrooms, and we added a window to the laundry space.
Okay, so basically the same architectural standard. We will not have a blank wall in there. This was again to improve the appearance, and that was very good. I wasn't sure whether you were able to put those in or whether it was going to be similar to a post office arrangement.
They're in a spot that's functional.
Okay, very good. Let's go to landscape. You mentioned that you're now providing the landscape around the HVAC unit, which you can just barely see right there.
Correct.
Okay, that's an existing unit which is not shaded. It will be shaded or covered with something.
Yes, it will.
Okay, there was issues with trees and tree counts. Okay, I wondered had that been standardized as to it was kind of nebulous as to how many trees were coming in.
Yes, the original landscape plan had a tree that was not actually in existence anymore.
Yep.
So what we've done is we've taken that and added the requisite number of trees that the commission was looking for.
Okay, well, you had an email in there that talked about the trees as being, where was it? About placing trees at the rear of the property, again, as a buffer against the colony. Let's see if I can find my statement here. Oh, the owner intends to replace the foundation planting at the front of the building, as well as add several additional trees in the rear area.
Yeah, the rear area.
What rear area?
It is the addition. Because the new addition that we're putting on, the garbage cans will be stored behind that addition. So we're going to put...
So rear area is not rear colony area, it's rear building area.
No, because the rear has trees that go all the way down, arborvitae that go all the way down the back.
That point is clear then. Okay, the last item was the fencing, and you said you're going to be working on the fencing to repair or replace, or both?
Yeah,
The chain link fence.
Yes. And that's, again, working with the state and that red fence, what we're going to do is that entire fence is going to have to be replaced. So it won't be repaired, it will be replaced. If we can get rid of the red fencing, then it will just be one standard line coming down. If not, then we'll have the separation as we have right now.
Okay.
With the newly painted.
Yeah, I noticed, I thought I had heard in the meeting that replacement was what you intended to do, and then when I saw the drawings, it said, I thought I saw repair, and I thought, it was different. But you've clarified that point, so that's good. Okay, those complete the items that were open from the concept review meeting. And given the fact that it took us almost a couple hours to get through them, I think you can understand that in the concept review why, okay, these things sometimes take so long to kind of thrash through. Okay, so I'm going to stop, and let's go around and let's see what commissioners think in total about all of this. Mickey, let's start with you.
I'm just wondering if we can get to a point where we could approve it, but just based on conditions, a lot of them spelled out in the concept review meeting. So where I'm at right now, I like the change in direction of the, when you first pull in, I'm fine with where your vehicles are at. This concept review meeting, the typed up version is, I think, what we would go through to say what our conditions for approval are. And the rest of the things I've already commented on. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Nothing further from me.
Jay?
Yeah, I think we're individually, I guess I shouldn't say we, I'm ready to move forward with the application and approval with the conditions as we kind of worked them up as we went through it. I think the most, the one I'm not sure I understand at this point is how it would work with Chief Porcerelli and and working it through. I think it's the right solution. I'm just not sure practically what the timing of that would look like and what our would we be deferring. I'm not sure who I'm asking the question to. Maybe the chair. Are we deferring entirely to the chief's judgment on these things, and if he's okay with the plan as set forth for the construction process, then we're okay with it? Is that kind of the consensus that we heard? Or?
In my opinion, absolutely yes.
Okay.
I would not expect that we would look over the chief's shoulder.
Okay. Then
his level of expertise and responsibility more than outweighs anything we have at this table.
I think that's right. I absolutely think that's right. So I would think that I would be able to move forward, and I think we noted any conditions as we went through there and move it forward for approval so the applicant can get moving on the construction process and get that ready for fall students.
Thank you, Jay. Ann?
Do you have any idea of timeline?
In
Timeline for-
reference to,
yeah.
as far as how long this would take?
Yeah.
Well, ideally, the summer construction is key because of the lack of students at the daycare.
Right, okay.
Again, the contractors understand that, I've spoken to all of them, and they understand the need for safety, but they also understand the need for speed to get this done quickly and efficiently. 2 months is pretty much what I need to get this done.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Jim?
Agree with what's said so far. Obviously the safety plan, sitting down with the chief would be great. I think I would be voting in that direction. And you had mentioned earlier about just limiting the use of the playground for the summer, and I'm sure you guys will consider that as well. Not fully eliminating it, but just using it less, more field trips. But no, I'm at a good point right now, so I have nothing further.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Brian?
I think we're losing an opportunity to green up the front of the building and help out with creating more of a walkable downtown. But other than that, I'm comfortable with the project and ready to move on with it.
Thank you, Brian. Eric?
Yeah, obviously you guys did a really good job at the pre-concept meeting. You fleshed out a lot of the issues, and I'm glad that they were addressed tonight. So I'm happy with where it's at, and overall I think it's a big improvement to the site, as well as to the safety with getting rid of or doing a more permanent job of capping off access to the old underground house.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, Brian, have you got a summary of what would be appropriate conditions, including those, for example, that we didn't touch on, like waiving the need for the truck unloading area, that sort of thing? Have we got a standard list You can read
Yeah.
that to us, that would drive a motion.
Bear with me, I have about 4 pages of notes here, so I think I've narrowed it down. Primary things I heard would be, one is a written description of the construction management and safety plan, review and approval of which would be deferred to Chief Porcerelli. And that would be in the event that the Plan A, so to speak, of construction access is not allowed by the colony. I believe that Plan
That
A
is correct.
The preference is for use of shared drive with colony if approved. If not, then we would look for the narrative, again, deferring to Chief Porcerelli. Item 2 would be reversal of the one-way traffic flow at the Horseshoe Drive for the infant and toddler drop-off space. Item 3 would be, and I don't know if you want this as a condition or not, I'm just putting it out there, would be retention of the 2 parallel spaces on the west side of the building, provided they are signed and striped appropriately.
Correct.
Item 4, and again, this is one where you may or may not wish to include this. I don't believe that details are shown on the site plan, but there was basically an acknowledgement, a requested acknowledgement that the protrusions related to the above-ground protrusions related to the underground house would be removed. And again, they don't show specifically on the site.
Or resolved. Resolved is a better word.
Sure.
Per the fire marshal recommendation.
Fire marshal. And then I'll go back to the one you referenced earlier, essentially a waiver of the conventional loading space requirement of Article 12, which you do have the discretion to do. In this particular instance, I think you could deem it unnecessary, and if they do have a UPS or a FedEx truck, the likelihood is high that they would just use the circle drive for that short-term duration, assuming there was no car in that place.
Okay. And also the resolution with the colony regarding the sump pump discharge. That a suitable resolution to both parties will be developed to resolve that water management issue.
Yeah, something to the effect of, resolution of the drainage issue across the subject site onto the colony's property. Some type of verbiage like that. Resolution, I think, is the key word. I believe that's all I have, Mr. Chair. I think the other items, again, were some clarifications and questions that were simply answered. I'm not sure there was anything else that needed to be included as a condition.
Okay, does anybody think we missed anything with respect to conditions? Everything else that's covered was in the revised plan.
Just so it's in writing, could I just also ask that you include the need to provide a copy of the new state license to the township for their files as well?
Add it, for sure. What's that again? Sorry. Oh, the fifth, third, essentially also conditioned upon the signed...
execution of the shared parking agreement.
Yes, for the 16 spots or whatever. Okay, what else have we missed?
Were there 2 or 3 parking spots for the director? Because they had that one for the float that they used too, right?
What we've said now is 2.
We said 2, okay.
2 striped spots.
Okay, and do we need to call out the change in direction of the driveway or no, with the signs?
Yeah, I mentioned that. If you want to add to that as part of that item, yeah, we could include, appropriate signage and striping as well.
Okay, please put that in as well. Okay, what else? Steve, you miss anything?
The shrubbery, whatever it is, around the HVAC.
Oh, yes. The shrubbery around the existing HVAC?
I think that's shown on the plans, isn't it? Did I miss
I don't
that?
think so.
On the new plan, it's just around the original, or I'm sorry, the new but we wrote in there, it was an addition, we didn't put it on the plan itself, but we
Okay.
wrote in that we were doing
Got
it,
it.
so
So
we'll
can we
add it
just
to the plan.
add the depiction to the plan? then,
Correct.
As opposed to the note?
Okay. Fencing, no, I think the fencing changes that came out of the concept meeting were shown on the plan, again, dependent upon the state. Brian, we miss anything? Eric? Okay, so we have the basis for a motion. We have a motion from Jay to approve based upon the contingency items that Brian just noted for us. Is there support? Support from Ann. Is there a discussion? I'll just make one comment before the vote. You know, on these sorts of complicated things, you know, some commissioners have reservations about some items, some commissioners have reservations about others. But again, what's important when you're evaluating something like this, what's a must and what's a want, okay? And what you want to come away with are the things which are the highest value items. Nobody gets everything they want. That's just the way it is, okay? And so, I for one, I may have seemed overly critical of the project, okay, but it was only due diligence on my part. And again, I recognize the fact that everything I want, I'm not going to get either, just like anybody else in this commission. But the things that have been documented tonight meet my requirements for being able to approve this project and sleep at night. And that's how I vote. So I support it. I'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, this will be documented. Brian, they report to Building Department. I take it to move forward from there.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Okay, let's move to the last item, which is the next meeting date. Brian, there's nothing on our agenda as far as I know.
The only thing we have, Mr. Chair, is we did have, Lori had an inquiry from a party we met with a few weeks ago. There is a potential submittal for a planning commission review of a lot coverage in excess of the maximum, but within the 5% threshold. There's a potential building on a vacant lot on Macomb Street that the party has been working on for the last couple of months. They've improved their situation, but they've not found a way to fully comply. So they've not submitted yet, but they did ask Lori when the next meeting would be with an understanding, I guess, that their thought process is they'd like to be ready to go within, sometime yet this summer.
Well, they're from my schedule, and yes, even though I'm retired, Jay, I do have a schedule. I'll beat you to the punch.
Yeah.
There are two dates which would work for me, July 7th or August 18th. Can I suggest, please, that we does July 7th work for anybody, or is that maybe too much around vacation and the 4th and all this that you wouldn't want to meet? If so, what I would suggest is given the uncertainty of the application, we target for August the 18th. If the applicant should come in and we feel there's a need to move this forward, we would consider July the 7th as Plan B. Everybody all right with that?
Yes.
Okay, so the next meeting will be August 18th. At that meeting, Brian, we're going to talk about master plan stuff.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about the zoning issues on Hickory Island and bring some of these things forward that we talked about at the last meeting.
That's correct.
Okay, on that basis, are there any additional comments or questions or concerns? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.